I saw a woman holding a cardboard sign with my name on it, the letters uneven, written slowly as if every stroke mattered. And for a brief second, I looked directly at her, the way you do when you're scanning a crowd for something familiar. But there was nothing familiar about her face, nothing that connected her to the life I had built or the memories I thought I still carried. So I adjusted my bag and walked right past her without a second thought, like she was just another stranger in a busy airport. And it only took 3 seconds, 3 quiet seconds, for everything in me to stop, because something deeper had already recognized what my mind refused to accept: the handwriting on that sign. The way my name curved slightly at the end, that handwriting had raised me, corrected my schoolwork, signed papers, written letters across distance just to remind me I wasn't alone. And suddenly the noise around me faded as one question pushed through everything. How could I recognize her? Handwriting before I recognized her face. And what did that say about the years I had spent away convincing myself distance was just part of growing up? Because in that moment I understood something I wasn't ready to face. What I had left behind hadn't stayed the same, and neither had she, and by the time I turned around to truly see her, it was already too late. And before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. How do you forget the face of the person who raised you? The one who knew you before the world did, who could tell something was wrong just by your voice. How does a face like that become unfamiliar enough that you can look straight at it and feel nothing? And that was the question that stayed with me, because the woman holding that sign wasn't just anyone, and yet she was standing there alone, unnoticed, like she had been waiting longer than she should have. And the more I thought about it, the more it didn't make sense. Why was she there alone? Why didn't I know she was coming? What had happened to her while I was gone? Because the woman I remembered was strong, steady, someone people noticed. But the woman I saw looked smaller, like time had taken something from her piece by piece. And I had been too far away to notice, too busy building a life I told myself was necessary. And if you want to understand how I could walk past my own mother and not recognize her face, you have to go back 10 years. 10 years earlier, my world was simple, held together by one person who never asked for recognition. My mother, strong in a quiet way, hardworking in ways that showed up in small details, early mornings, late nights, sacrifices no one saw. She wasn't rich, but she was solid, the kind of solid that made you feel safe. And in our neighborhood, she was respected, not because she demanded it, but because she earned it every day. She ran a small market stall and somehow knew everyone by name, not just their names, but their stories. And I grew up watching that, watching her give without complaint, and I didn't understand what it cost her. I just knew I wanted something more, something bigger. And when I got accepted into a university abroad, it felt like proof that I was meant for something else. And when I told her, she smiled, even though I could see something in her eyes I didn't understand then. And I told myself I was doing this for both of us, that I was chasing a better life, not realizing what it was costing her. Because I never asked what it would take, I just assumed she would find a way, and she never corrected me. She stood there as I packed, holding on to small moments, and when I left, she hugged me just long enough to say everything she didn't put into words, and before I walked out, she said she'd find a way, no matter what. 3 months later, the gold was gone, and I didn't know, because from where I was everything looked normal. My life was moving forward, and every time she asked if I needed anything, I said I was fine, never asking what it was costing her to keep saying yes. Because back home things were changing quietly. First the bangles, then the earrings, then the necklace she never took off, each piece gone without a word. And still she told me she was proud of me. Still she made it seem like none of it mattered. But it wasn't enough, and when the cost kept rising, she made a decision that changed everything. She sold the land, the one thing her father left her, something that couldn't be replaced. And she did it without telling me, turning everything she had into something I could use. And while she was losing everything, I didn't notice. As the years passed, the distance showed up in smaller ways. Calls became shorter, messages delayed, excuses became normal. I'm busy, I'll call later, and later kept moving further away. And the more that happened, the easier it became to believe she was still okay, still strong, still the same. Because that belief made it easier for me to keep going. Easier than asking questions I wasn't ready to hear answers to. So I convinced myself she was okay, because it was easier, until one day. Everything changed, because that was when the call came. I landed at the airport tired, distracted, thinking about work, moving with the crowd without really seeing anyone, until I saw her, standing off to the side holding a sign with my name, Michael, and I slowed down just enough to look, but what I saw didn't match the image in my head. She looked smaller, thinner, her shoulders slightly bent, her hands holding the sign carefully, and her face didn't connect to anything in my memory. So instead of stopping, I kept walking, trusting that if it was her, I would know instantly, and I walked right past her, close enough to hear her breathing, close enough to see her hands trembling, and still I didn't recognize her, until I heard a voice behind me, soft, familiar in a way I couldn't ignore, and then she said my name. And something inside me broke, because that voice, I knew that voice, and suddenly everything I had just believed fell apart, and I stopped, and slowly I turned around, and this time I wasn't just looking, I was seeing the lines on her face, the weight in her posture, the years I hadn't been there for, and for a moment we just stood there, and then she smiled, a small, gentle smile, and in that moment I knew, this was her. This was my mother, the same woman who told me she would find a way, the same woman whose handwriting I recognized before her face. And what made it harder was what she didn't say. She didn't ask why I walked past her. She didn't question me. She just looked at me like none of that mattered as much as the fact that I had finally turned around. What I didn't understand then was that this wasn't the end, because hours later I was sitting in a hospital room, and she was there, lying in a bed, her body fragile in a way I had never seen. And it was only then that everything connected. Her wrists were empty, no bangles, no jewelry, nothing left, just the truth of everything she had given up, and standing there, I realized that every step forward I had taken had cost her something I never went back to see. And yet even then, she didn't ask questions, she didn't hold anything against me. She just looked at me and said, "You came, not where were you, not why did you leave, just you came." And in that moment I understood something that stayed with me, that sometimes the people who give the most ask for the least, and the hardest part isn't what they say, it's what they choose not to say. If this story touched you, if it made you think about someone you haven't spoken to in a while, then ask yourself one question: who would you call today? Not tomorrow, not later, but right now, because time keeps moving whether we notice or not, and the people we assume will always be there don't always stay the same. And be honest, would you have recognized her, or would you have done what I did? Trusted what you saw instead of what you already knew? Because sometimes the hardest truths are the ones we realize too late. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if you believe family should never be taken for granted, if you believe the people who stood by you deserve more than just your success, they deserve your presence, then take a moment to subscribe. Because sometimes all it takes is one story to remind us what really matters. And if this made you think about someone, don't ignore that feeling. Act on it while you still can, because the difference between regret and gratitude is often just one decision made at the right time.